Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here with you before beer time. I've been promised that beer will not be served before we finish our presentation. So I especially like to be with you this year in the 10th anniversary. You may remember the title of this presentation before we gave it the final title, because we like movies and because we like to make it difficult for the organizers to post our videos because of the IP issues. Today we have brought with us a movie that comes with a trailer which is related to the 10th anniversary. We start off there. So we are Monica and Raul from DNSSECrets, and today we would like to focus on the following reflection. We would like to reflect on our industry and what is one of the main enemies that we have in cybersecurity. Well, the answer is compatibility, especially backwards compatibility. We suffer that on a daily basis. Many protocols, IPv4 was dead, has been dead for centuries now, but continues to be there. So HTTP continues to be there. Now we have WPA3 that will replace WPA2. However, in the design, there are a number of mechanisms, transition mechanisms to switch from WP2 to WP3, so therefore it will take time up until we move up to WPA3, and then it seems that probably this year and the next year will be the year of the DNS and all these heritage elements, DNSSEC, DOH, DOT, etc., etc. What is the other big enemy of cybersecurity? Art. Art is translated to us into marketing, and how careful we want to be with marketing. So basically, Monica and myself were around one day, and we came across an art exhibition. We went there to see it, and this was the description. These 7 sculptures and paintings are the result of ongoing exploration associated to human beings, the society where we live, and this is materialized in these artworks, looking for a space that generates coexistence on both extremes and to live in this duality. And then from this description we said, oh, that exhibition must be awesome. Then we went to the exhibition, and then we could see all this sleek design, all these lighting, and I said, well, let us take a look, let us find this duality, this union of the materials, this joining and coexistence of materials. And you go and say, well, I know nothing about art myself, because that duality they are talking about and the embedding of the individuals in society, I just cannot see it. Sorry, but I cannot say it. But this kind of sounds like something I'm used to seeing in my industry and in my sector, because the description of that work of art and this is exactly the same thing. And however, there is something which is missing here, that it has been the focus recently, especially in RSA, and it is the zero trust that I feel for everything that says in there. And we were visiting the art exhibition. I mentioned to Monica, well, surely if Antonio will be here, surely machine learning and artificial intelligence will help him explain me what this art exhibition is about. And this is the expression that you get on your face, and I say, it's enough, stop selling smoke. And because we like to finish off with proverbs, well, you will see that in the trailer we have included some proverbs. Here it says, what a bird in hand is worth 1,000 birds, flying birds. So don't try to spread yourself too thin. So there are a number of elements, technologies that have been working, so why don't we use them? And please stop so much hype. And I would like to take this opportunity, because there is someone in here who owes me a dinner. Okay, so this is a clip about that dinner that is owed to Monica. So now let us move into the world of Harry Potter, because this is what is happening. You are giving a magic wand and then said, well, look, this will resolve all the security problems that you have in your company, and magically you will detect all the APTs, there will be no information leak, everything is ultra safe. These are the worlds of hype, Potter. Yes, but that's the way it is. Hold on and wait. Because pot is the vase, and then the potter is the person who makes this pot. But pot also means getting distracted in English. So they are the ones who make or create all that hype, all that distraction. And then Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. For us, it is a great pleasure to be here with you on 2019, celebrating the 10th anniversary. If we play around with this and we replace some of the letters, we come to the title of our presentation, which is DNSSEC. This is what we will be telling you about. We will be telling you about the zone signing, the research that we did in that regard, and then validation, and researches and conclusions and results that we got from that. So first of all, I'll hand over to Monica. I would like to thank you for trusting us one more year. So we would like to wish you happy anniversary. And I would like to thank this great professional who is with me. I would like to share him for sharing this stage with me. And I would like to thank him for working with him on a day-to-day basis, because he's so wise. Well, because Roman has given us some more time than we expected, we will be adding some additional demos. So we will tell you about the architecture of DNSSEC. We will go through it, and we will focus on the vulnerability areas of DNS. Here we are talking about vulnerability and authenticity. Here we have cache poisoning attacks. They are less and less relevant because, new measures have been recently implemented to stop that. And then the spoofing attacks, often linked to man-in-the-middle attacks, where the attacker give responses to resolvers, like if it were the legit server, where is actually now. How many of you have followed the CNN CERT presentation? This is for us to have a feeling, because this is kind of a continuation. We just don't want to overlap any content, to repeat any content. Basically, the DNSSEC architecture is based on two pillars, the client and the server one. And then it resolves the issue of authenticity and integrity based on a zone signing scheme of asymmetrical key, where all the logs associated to the same result are grouped up in RS sets, and then through a zone signing key, we get a register for those whenever the resolver launches a query. What happens here? How can we validate that the signatures are correct? It is impossible for the resolver to have all the keys of all the domains on the internet. So therefore, a special register is created where we include the public side of our signature key. To validate this register, we introduce a second key, which is a key SK, which is the key signing key. And here we include the public side in this register, and it is signed with the private key. What happens here? We have a self-signed register, and no one would dare to go in the middle and to claim that these are the keys. So for that, we establish a chain of trust. So we do it through generating a hash key SK that we transfer it to the parent zone, which is an additional register. It is signed with the signing zone key. So therefore, we are distributing trust. This chain of trust goes through all the levels of the hierarchy up until we get to the root side. And here we delegate, we generate a trust element. So that means that the key SK key is compiled in the resolver. So each TLD of a event will provide the logs, and then everything will be done through the chain of trust. What is the relationship between all that and Harry Potter, you may wonder? Well, Harry Potter, well, actually, who have watched Harry Potter for us to have a feel? Well, it is good that is a good number of you. Oh, I didn't watch it myself, says Raul. One of the high moments of the film is when he received the admission letter. He doesn't know where the letter comes from. He doesn't know anything about the content, but he is sure that it is legit, that is integral, that no one has altered the content from the origin. But he doesn't know who is the teacher and whether that signature is her teacher. So in this case, the trust anchor that we added is like 275 meters high, 400 kilograms weight. And I don't know what about you, but he is like really big. I don't know whether it's trustworthy, but he's really big. He's like big as an anchor. And then you said that you were convinced that everyone was going to implement DNS in proprietary zones, that they were going to use validation, and then for that we established a DNSSEC roles taxonomy, where we had the server side, then we have the resolver side, and then we could see the role that each of them played. We have the vampires, those that did not sign the server, but they also use the validation capabilities of the resolvers. Then we have this posing person. I sign it, I'm very cool, but I do not make any validation. Then we have the others, and I'd be one of the others, where I'm going to take the pain. And then those of you who said that from that moment on you would start validating, did we actually convince you or not? Thanks to Eleuterio Lopez, we have the latest data. So here we have total number of domains with .es, and then the domains that are signed with DNSSEC. These are figures at the end of November. These are figures from last week. So we have gone over the 1% mark, which is quite of an encouragement. It is a small step for DNSSEC, but a great leap for humanity. So you will go back to that 10 years later and say, oh yes, at that time they said we've gone over 1%. Then from viewpoint of validation, figures in December were around 10% and now, no, 6% and now 8%. Well, if you take a look at the increase percentage, so 31 more validation from servers in our countries. That means that we are making good progress. We are moving in the right direction. Vampires should not be too conformists. So, but we convinced ICANN, because in February this year, they decided to deploy DNSSEC over the internet. This is not our merit. Actually, this comes from a detection in increases compromising DNS infrastructure. DNS is at the pillar of every single communication on the internet. So therefore, it seems to be an element that deserves a strong focus. So the attack that triggered the ICANN communique, you can take a closer look at it in the Grepsum security website. Basically, the attackers hijacked DNS infrastructure of a register, which curiously enough, the register, whose name is NetNot, operates one of the 13 root name servers. So therefore, this was a major incident. Actually, the underlying objective was not that much DNS, but to capture credentials through illicit changes in registers. Basically, attackers gained control of registered administrative systems. This is what we know as game over. But in this case, DNSSEC became an unexpected ally for everyone, randomly or unexpectedly, but actually gave them food for thought. This flowchart describes what the attack was about. We have the NetNode email infrastructure, which was the target of the attack. Then we have the DNS resolution system, where the NetNode area is fully signed. Here on this end, we see the resolver used by the NetNode employees to access the corporate infrastructure in charge of making the validation. We have added this side as an extra to secure the last mile so that no one gets in the middle there. And then we have here the attackers. They have set up the email parallel architecture. As we mentioned before, they compromised the registered DNS administration system. This allowed them to disable the DNSSEC. What objective? What was the purpose? To get certificate for the legit servers. Then they enabled DNS again so that everything went back into operation. When they launched the attack, they tried to impersonate the right addresses of the legit servers. But when servers started to validate the DNS, could not do it. So therefore, it returned to the clients a validation error, said, I cannot validate that address. There was a denial of service, but no credentials were compromised. For an hour, no one could use the email, but no credentials were stolen. If attackers had been clever enough to disable DNSSEC, they would have been successful with their attack, and they would have made a perfect man in the middle. So this allows us to draw a number of conclusions. So DNSSEC is not enough. Other additional measures are required. From the administration of DNSs, we have to demand from registers to include other authentication measures, minimum a second factor of authentication. And we also should insist that DNS zone transfer operations are not secure through DNSSEC. However, there are also other old protocols that are good to authenticate both ends of the connection where there is DNS zone transfer. Then we also have another leg also associated with DNSSEC, which is the extensible provisioning protocol. It is based on XML, and even if you can apply it to any internet provisioning, it was originally designed to standardize communication between registers and registries for everything relating to changes in domains and to prevent hijacking of domains. Why? Because this is highly heterogeneous. Well, some registers, just by getting an email from someone saying, I'm the administrator of this area, please make the change for me. They do it. To standardize this communication, this protocol was implemented and can also be used on top of other transport protocols. And the main problem that it has, well, not all the registers, not all the registries support it, but the session persists through a login command. So therefore, the client identifier and as well as the password comes in plain text. And what can we do here? Well, I would like to congratulate people from Red.S because .S is one of the few TLDs of first level that support EPP through HTTPS. So therefore, they are adding an additional layer of security. That was ICANN and the massive deployment of DNSSEC from the server side, but then on the 1st of December 2019 has been marked as a DNS Flag Day. That day was stopped where the agents involved in resolving DNS decided to stop, and they said, enough, we are there are many authoritative resolvers that do not support the original DNS standard dating back from 1987 and gives response not compliant with the original format, or they do not implement DNS extensions. Most of the operators of resolvers and developers of software of resolver, especially from the open source world, let us stop here. As of today, we will not be supporting this type of responses. This is basically the same thing that we told you. So within this initiative, the nuance is the following. We would like you to be aware of DNS Flag Day because it took place this year, and it is one more initiative. And then we have discovered something similar to that on the side of the client. No one has talked about it yet, but later on we will make a cross between this and what we discovered on the client side. So on the DNS Flag Day, you have the information provided by all these agents for you to see whether your resolver is being RFC compliant, well, how to do it from the server side, from the resolver side. Also, you can access manufacturers of network servers for you to see what are the problems of firmware that have been resolved. What have we done since last December? So we started to look at how easy or difficult was to sign a DNS zone. And let us say, why a zone only? Let us try to sign 4 DNS zones. We drew very interesting conclusions. We will distinguish between the register responsible for communications and for changes in DNS with our registry, and then we will have the zone operator. In this case, the operator is an external one. We could have set up our own DNS operation, but this is also a good example to show you that because most of us we delegate the management of the domain in third party, this should be relatively easy to make. In some cases, the register and the operator will be the same entity, and then the signing time. A DNS zone is fully signed when the DS registry is operational in the parent zone. We may have the signatures generated with our key for our zones, but the area is not fully operational up until the DNS zone has not been signed in the parent zone. Sometimes took a few minutes, sometimes a few hours. Another interesting conclusion is the type of use made of signature algorithms. And now I'm looking at Jorge and Alfonso, just in case they would like to correct me if I'm wrong. So we'll tell you more about signature algorithms that have been described. In the case of the register of the operator of the .s area, they signed it with the NSEC3 SHA-1, and then it established the signature scheme based on the most typical thing, DSK and KeySK. Then we also have the operator and the register taking care of the .info zone, and in this case they use a signature algorithm based on elliptic curve. This is quite of a novelty because as it has been in the RFC for quite a long time, first-level operators do not use it very widely. And in this case, we found that they only use a signature for the whole scheme. I'll tell you more about the implications of doing so, because I've just told you that in this case, the starting domain was a domain that we have registered with and operated with through an operator. But one of the other things that we learned is that registries do not admit that a registry that has been registered with a specific operator, they make you wait for 60 days before you change the operator. And this other third operator operating in the cloud also used the elliptic curve algorithm. However, the scheme for the signature was a double one. What are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, we only have one key to sign the register of the area, and those associated to the key is that the size of the register of DNS is smaller. And as for the rest are only disadvantages, because in principle only KSK should sign that register. So if we establish a longer key length, the register would only be signed once. So if someone asks you to sign a triple W, you have to send the DNSX and then this ZSK side. However, in this case, only the register of the KSK has to sign it. The disadvantage is that when you have to renew the key for KSK, we have to communicate with the payment zone. However, in this case, it would be a bit more complex to do that. However, when we have this double signature, we can renew the CSK and the KSK separately. CSK can be smaller or shorter signature. There will be less robust, so therefore they will have to be renewed on a more frequent basis. But all that depends on the type of services that we provide through our DNSSEC domain and the type of exposure. Keys, signature keys, the private side may be on an external server from where the signature takes place, and then it is delivered to the server from where the resolution will be delivered. However, in some zones, this is not possible. For instance, if you have dynamic areas or the area changes a lot and you have to delete all the time to add registers of the time, having the keys in an external server and to transfer the signatures to another server where the resolution is being made, this could be a bit complicated, more complicated. Well, to speed up a bit, so one thing that happened with ICANN was, well, if we go back to .s and we say, well, because we are professional, the first thing we are going to do is to sign our first production domains for DNSSEC. And then we took a look at that in ICANN, and we could see that of the registers in 2013, those that have been recognized as such have a number of requirements. One of them being that at least the register should give you at least the capacity for you to upload that register to the registry. So the registrar, but you use DNSSEC, would allow you to upload the .s register. And you may complain about that, and you can go and say, look, this is in the list of accredited party, and does not allow me to upload the register. We obviously did it. We are waiting for the answer. So in our next presentation, we'll tell you what has been the outcome of it. So now I'd like to show you the algorithm table for supported signatures. We have highlighted these ones because these are the ones that we have found. RSA SHA-1 is, we don't advise it, but it is the only one that is mandatory. So here we have like backwards compatibility here, and then we have algorithm number 8, RS8, SRA, 256 for non-existing register, and then the elliptic curve ones. We were going to make a demo, but to facilitate legibility and for you to follow the color codes, we have decided to create this slide. So this is the field of a DNSSEC answer when signed. So this parameter KDIG makes the server or that the DNS register to understand that we are a resolver, that we speak DNSSEC. So this means that the flag DO will have a cost, meaning that the resolver has those capabilities. The requested register is the triple W. When we get the answer, we get the register and the associated signature. Signature is identified through the keyword RRSIG and the register associated to it and the algorithm used to generate the signature, as well as the key ID, which has generated the signature, and these two parameters that set out the validity period. The signature is not always enforced, and then this period of validity is being renewed. So you have the date, the month, the year. The three operators that we used, enabling DNSSEC. Well, we couldn't really select our own parameters. So we just waited for the register to be propagated or spread to the parent area, and we also wait for all the registers to eliminate the that from the cache, and we did all that. So I also tell you what we did when we transferred the DNS operation. In the case of Cloudflare, tells you that what you have to do is to click on the enable button. This is what we told you before, 3 DNS operators and 3 different signature models. When we requested the DNS key, the domain .s domain, we have these different numbers with these different bits. This is the security entry point. This is what the resolver indicates, and this is the key that we have to use in the chain of validation. In the .info, the DNS key register is integrated only in the key zone through the elliptic curve 1. The 3 is the zone, so that means that these are DNSSEC registers. And then when we migrate to the C operator, what we had before as a signature with one key only, an elliptic curve, became a double key, also with elliptic curve. What about the DS records? What did they look like? For the .s domain, you can see here, this is the ID that was for the key signed in the DS record. Okay, I will go back to it, okay? So this identifies the key that gave origin to this record. This identifies the algorithm that used or associated to that key. And here we have the signature of the DS record. So therefore, the identifier of the key generated this signature comes from the parent zone. In this case, .s. In this case, if we request the registry of DNS key, we see here the CSK comes in with this key identifier. So the operator transfer. Basically, this is what we've been telling you about. So we went from B to C. We had to wait for 60 days. So therefore, we couldn't transfer the register. And what we did manually was the following. We did all that on our providers, operators consoles. So operator B was our entry or starting operator. So we asked operator 3 to operate the area for us. They operated the DNS registers, the NS records. Then we went back to the console of operator B. We informed them that it would take a few hours for the change to be implemented, and then B disabled the signature of our area. Parallel to that, we had requested operator C to sign the area for us, and because operator C was aware that it was not our register, gave us the DS record that B had to upload to the parent zone. Why B disabled the zone signature? Because the DS record had not been signed by it, but it will be signed by the new operator.
As we will see practically now, we had to add the DS registry in our register to have it transferred to the TLD of the file. As we can see from the viewpoint of the console, the C, this is the operator, calculated the hash of the KSK, the DS registry, indicated the algorithm used to calculate this DS, the public key of the KSK that will sign the DNSX, the key identifier, and this will be considered as an SQ. In the B console, when we have this, we had to add a new DS registry. In this case, we had to fill it in ourselves. Key identifier, algorithm, hashing algorithm, and the DS registry itself. After some time, B went to the info, the new DS registry, and the zone resumed normality. In this interval, a few hours passed from one overnight sort of thing, and in theory we should have standard mechanisms so that the zone remains signed. We can have in the root area a double DS registry, one with a KSK initial and a destination KSK. So if there's no contact between both agents, well, then it doesn't work. So what was done? As you can see, the DSN is quite related to the renewal of a KSK or the change of an operator, anything related to the KSK. So in a standard a couple of years ago, a couple of new registries were defined, the CDS and the DNS key that is published as part of the records to inform the parent zone that it wants to change the DSK, so there will be an update in the DS registries. There are two mechanisms to report this. One is the polling mechanism, where the parent zone polls child zones periodically. If there are both the DNS key or the DS will prevail. And the other mechanism is pushing, in which the child zone notifies the parent zone of CDS, CDNS key, and the publication of these two registries. The pros, quite clearly, the renewal of the KSK is completely independent from anything related to registries operators. The cons is that at this stage it's still not a de facto standard. There are many CDLs that are not supported. Mainly two, Switzerland and Czech Republic, are the only ones that now support this automatic mechanism. Here, after the transfer to C, initially we had the zone operated by the B operator, and when we request the DS registry a record after completing the transfer, here we had the key identifier we showed you earlier. Once we are in C, this is our class identifier. The pink color text is interesting because the top part, yes, the upper level can admit the DS with a SHA-1 or SHA-5 or 6. When a DS registry is upraised, this depends on what you have at the top. So this identifies the algorithm used. The SHA-1 is shorter. As the reading of this is more complicated, there's a tool in DNSSECrets.net that gives you a validation for a specific domain. It's good because for two domains, depending from the .info, if you use a domain for which this diagram was calculated, it'll show it quickly. Otherwise, if it is the first time, it will build it up from scratch. There's no cache. So This query here was launched on March 16, and as you can see in the root area, we had this KSK that had been revoked. Yeah, let me finish, she says. He's jumping ahead. Many people didn't see the previous chat. Okay, I'm getting there. So, in the query we launched March 26, we found that this wasn't in this situation, and we had the key. Well, it has a different identifier. Investigating, we found that last year we had the renewal of the KSK of the root zone, which is a sensitive issue because to do a confidence class or trusted class, we have to make sure that everybody has the result was updated, not only in the cache, but also in pre-compiling. If someone didn't update the KSK class, he won't be able to validate it. So for some time, the status of the key changes, and in these days, the key that was revoked and was unused for signing was removed, and instead we had the key to be used for the next generation due to expiry or because the KSK was compromised. So that's why the key is pre-published to facilitate the renewal process so that the resolvers can recognize it before the process begins. I missed something, Raul? If they don't know what happens with the KSK, okay, so in all levels of the hierarchy, the .info, you can see the DNSX and the KSK that is signing in the same way that with this KSK here, the .info has a double KSK and a double DNSK in order to facilitate renewals. And in the final part of the hierarchy, we have the registries that will be used. At this address, you can access an interesting database from which we can obtain many data about DNS resources of associated resources. So with this query, you can query all the DS. And we thought it was interesting, since you took a seat to see what kind of sign-in algorithms are being used by the higher level TLDs. Could you bring out the terminal so we can see it online? Okay, while Raul does this, at this stage the most widely used algorithm is the RSA with Shadow 5.6. Also, we ran the query just a few minutes ago, and we have seen that this value has increased. As we shall see with this RSA SHA with SHA 512, we have very few. Is it coming? Yeah, it's coming. Meanwhile, I will situate you in the context. In NSSEC 3, as you know, in DNS, when we request a resource that is non-existent, the return is a non-existent domain, but it doesn't associate data, so we could generate a signature for that response. So DNSSEC also wants to guarantee the resource to this response. For that, they use a special registry. Initially, they use the NC record, which, when it is requested, it returns an NSC registry, which is the content of which is the next registry that is available. This gives rise to a problem, which is the zone number, because I can request resources and I'll always get a non-existent resource, so I could try to get all the list of resources in my zone. In some domains this is not a problem, but in others some services are critical and they're not interested in exposing this information. So I will finish by saying that that's why we provide the NSSEC3 records and their signature algorithm that use the scheme, and instead of giving us the name of the following results, they give us a hash. So the zone numbering is more complicated. There are other resources, but I'm not getting to them now. As we can see, we have the mapping of the algorithm type with a number of domains to this date, and these here are so the elliptical curve. Brazil is one of the countries, a pioneer country, that has a deployment of SEC, and Swiss and Liechtenstein, small countries like that, that have a lot of capital. They have the jets that being hacked by the previous speakers. Yeah, I think that it's good that our operators are signing off with elliptical curves. This part here was left like a wild card, depending on how much time we had. So I'll give the control to Raul, and then, yeah, I know what beer means for some people, so the pressure is there. So we will go to validation. I could tell you many adventures we've had with DNSSEC that could be a long evening. So let's cut it short. Let's go to the validation. Monica told you about signing zones for validation by others. Now I want to validate what my users resolved. For this, I have to count the DNSSEC bits, the bits or flags. Basically, there's 3, which if we bring them together is doc.dead. Dead is document. So the DNS gives the DNSSEC as father receives from his son DNS this diploma to the world's best father. So here we have DNS request, the additional registries. This is where we have what Monica was saying about DNS flag day, and there's a flag that is the DO. I'll tell you now what it's about. The AD is in the header of the DNS flags, and the CD does a mapping that is sort of not very intuitive. This is the other one. There you have the 3. The DO says, I want the registers of DNS. Give me the registries of this registry A. I support DNS, that is DO. DNS, OK. CD is checking disabled, which means that I will talk DNS, but you don't validate. I validate. So you give me the records, but do not verify whether the signatures are valid or not. I will tell you why this is, in which cases this is used. And then the AD is the validated data, authentic data. I ask you for a DNS record, and you say, I have validated, and here you have it. And I give you the AD flag as validated. So all this is in the RFCs. Here I'm just giving you some details about these flags. So, as a resolver, I support DNSSEC. I said, give me the registries and the signatures, give me the flag, and if it is not in the request, I won't get the DNSSEC registries. So the check in disable, this is used to define who will validate. So I'm saying don't validate, I will do so because I have strange scenarios, areas that I want to isolate, because I validate with a different time frame than yours. So I have to do something with the signature validations, and the authentic, which is more logical. So I make you a DNS request as a resolver, and tell me if you have validated. Give me the flag, the AD flag. Now you can trust the validated data. Originally, We'll see how the requests go. So I said DO, and we validate DNS. So this has recently changed with an RSC, in which I indicate how the bit AD validates. Please validate this and give me the validated response. That's the idea. So I want you to see that the DO validates the requests, the CD says I take charge, and the DO and CDs, if included, are sent back in the responses, and the AD goes in the responses saying I have validated, so you can trust this validation, even though it wasn't in the requests. However, there was an RFC 6840, the newest, which says, yes, put it also in the request to indicate your interest in me validating. So there's a mixture between AD and DO. So AD is I am interested in you validating, the DO is I want to see the DNSC records because I support them. That's the idea. At the level of responses, this is easy, as both DNS and SEC, they coexist. What they do is that in the response code of DNS, if the response is valid in DNS or DNSSEC, and the signatures are okay, I get a 0, no error. And if I cannot validate, it's like serve fail. It's a server failure for whatever reason. In this case, because DNSSEC cannot validate the signatures. Imagine everybody is convinced, everybody has signed, we have DNSSEC, and we use it to validate. That's the idea. And here we have the problem of the last mile, which is the last leap between clients using services and making use of the DNS service and the entire DNS infrastructure. You may recall that in April, the American Day, Fool's Day, April Fool's Day, Cloudflare brought out a new service which is 1111 to supplement the 888 of Google, what we call the quads, the DNS quads. This is super DNS services in the cloud, and all of them DNSSEC and DOH and DOT. They implement all these safety protocols. In April, we started to play with these with this quad, and we started finding some funny results, which we will delve deeper in now. And we took our router, a lab router, a fiber connection in Spain, and we connected to the 111, and we did have a DNS service, but it was like very close. There was something strange, and it had a web service. And you said, hey, a cloud server on a Cloudflare, they're not going to put a web server. The hub of IoT had everything in it, but the Cloudflare server does not. So then you got interception, the web server. So we said, let's take a look at it. And this web server redirects, identifies you as a server, sends you to the local IP of the router, interception. We scanned at the DNS level to see if this is resolving, and P53 with a further DNS, and this is at 2 jumps away, 2 hops away. The Cloudflare have a powerful DNS, but 2 hops away, unlikely. So it is the router that has the one quad configured. So we started on a bad footing. So this was a global problem. Cloudflare realized that as soon as they published it, throughout the world actually, it turns out that the one network allocated to Nick in Asia Pacific was from 2010. It wasn't previously assigned. It was assigned to AppNick. They agreed to set up the service, but the people don't read the RFCs. So instead of heeding the 1918, which is private network RFC, so the people used one as a wild card. Why bother with anything else? So everybody used the one quad. Routers, operators in their domestic networks, because there were no services that the users went there. So then we started to play here. I would like to thank the Rooted, Roman, Jose, Pedro, Jorge, many people who said, well, we didn't help you that much, you're all very modest, but we've been pestering you to say, hey, this script, can you run it in different internet environments? Because we're seeing what we find, and we get a better vision in some Spanish operators, that is. So, all this was the problem of the quad 1, or one quad. So, the second problem is that we were with the DNSSEC working. This was in April. This was already May. In fact, after the April quad 1, so we're testing the DNSSEC, as Monica was saying. So look what we found. I made 2 queries to ISOC, and the queries are like 4 days different between each other, in July actually. And where are the differences? They're the same query. What is the difference in the answers? It's a bit late, I know, but you know, think about the beers. The sooner you find it, the sooner we get the beers. Okay, on the one hand, the RSIC is more noteworthy. I'm asking with them DNSSEC, and here there's something funny, but there are more details than that. It is in small print. You see? ADDO, RR, SIG, and it's empty. So what's happening here? I said I talk DNSSEC with Google, who talks DNSSEC, and in the middle, there's someone doing something. That was a conclusion. So we have to. I want to show you this with a demo, because this morning we noticed that this changed. So what was the problem here? That we said the script we share with various investigators, shall we release it for people to do the check? The check-in. We need an indicative to see if we're being manipulated in the communication. So this is, here we got the previous window. So I do a dig here. A dig of the record A and the example. Here what I'm doing is through a VPN. I'm getting into the conflictive environment. So I do a query, and it resolves, and it gives me the IP. And this is pure DNS, okay? So now I come to .com, and this before gave me a rehost. Okay, now I have the resists of the example.com. They cannot resolve. It's the same IP. It's the example domain. This has changed. This morning we found that. Now look, we cannot reach servers. Something has been altered there. So what is the summary that we should get to example.com or .org, and you would get a refuse or this new message, which is to say that you can't do it. We do this. Here we do it through another resolver, and we have example.com that resolves it.org. We have a problem in the interception of the DNS in some way. Someone is doing that. So, what did we do? We started to investigate in greater depth in the router. And the router gives you lots of capabilities for establishing parameters. So these are the basic mode of the routers. I'm highly critical of this. We are in 2019. People are more savvy technologically, and you configure the Quad 1 because through Cloudflare certain communication will be protected. Anyway, we went to the expert mode, and the DNS options, now they do appear, is this one. Safe DNS. What will a user do if he sees that? Activate it, right? That's what I would do, because there's a safety. Because this option is not safe DNS. This has been included in the HTML. The button should say DNS safe that I want you to intercept all the traffic. That is what the button really says. If you liked the name, you will really freak out when you'll see what happens with when we activate that option. And in the expert mode, you can't change the DNS servers. Sorry, and the most you can do is take a look at them to see which are being in use. So then you say, God, something's going on here. The Quad 1 is the main server of Cloudflare. The 0101 is the worst one because it has a router, but it's not clear where it is. It doesn't have DNS. So the situation is even worse. So then we said, okay, we have to investigate this further. So what did we do? If you can't change the DNS, you can at least be the admin in the router. So we have basic and a bit more than basic. One with a big button. So then we said, okay, we've got to get here between the DNT and the router, and we have to go into the admin mode, hack it. This is what we used to do it. Do you know, does anyone know what this is? Raise your hand. Wow. Please look around, those who have raised your hands. You were the guys who went the secondary school and the cars that Amador was talking about yesterday. This is a hub, the poor cousin of the switches we have right now. But if you still have one hanging around, because this is a fast Ethernet hub, so then you put it in the middle, you investigate a little, and you become admin of the router, basically. So then, when you are an admin, we switch to English. If it's basic and expert, Spanish, but when you're admin, it has to be English. Okay, that's good. So you go in the internet section with the DNS. You see the button is still there, but there's one that the DNSSECrets, I believe, and it says deactivated. So this means that the DNS flag date, but it's been taken here. It doesn't support eDNS, so they remove the DNSSEC, and this is the behavior we got. You press on this button and nothing happens.
As you see, well, nothing changes in the behavior. We continue. And then we went to settings, and I said DNS process, and I said, well, spoiler, come on, damn radio frequency. Then when you go to DNS process and say, oh, a proxy is enabled, it intercepts you, you click on it, and that's nothing either. So what is happening here? And I say SSH. Let us go inside, see what is happening inside, because we cannot find an explanation. And this is the question that we had. And we said, who is to blame here? Who is disabling DNSSEC? Either the router that is doing something that it should not be doing, or it is the actual network of the operator that, as my query goes through it, they disable it. So we wanted to answer that. So we went into the router, And we could see a DNS mask running. We were expecting that. I mean, it really makes sense. That is in the port 53 delivery service, and then the first price. I said, oh, this makes sense. So the bridge interface of this Unix Linux is the internal LAN network, and it has its bridge interface, which is number 1. So this explains the 2 hops that we could see. So if you don't like it, you can eliminate that interface because you are an admin. But our problem was not number 1. So that was the problem in April, but in July, we couldn't use the DNSSEC. So nothing about DNS there, and we said, okay, let us take another look. So through the hub, we went in the middle, and then we could see what was coming out of the router and who was in the middle. So 46 is the public IP for the router, and these other 2, whatever, are the DNSs. So you know that 2 DNSs have been configured, so you make a query to each of them, and this is the query. So there is a query sent to DNS. One of them is active, the other one is disabled. So this is enabled by default, and we said, what do we know now? We know that it is not the router, because the router is already sending it through DNSSEC to the outside. Well, so the party is starting now. If it is not the router, there is something in the network that is changing that. Then we get the responses, as we can see here, DNS says to us, and then party again. 2 responses for our question, neither flag AD nor flag DO. But careful here, attention, what was I expecting to find? A DNS flag day, isn't it? So therefore, that perhaps something was not supporting DNS extensions with OPT, and that was removed. But this is not what was happening here. Actually, it is compatible with eDNSO, and now the DNSSEC flags are being selectively removed. They are doing it on purpose. Big trouble. So we have referred to it as client-side DNSSEC flag day. So basically, as Monica said before, they were not only authoritative servers not supporting DNSSEC on the server side, but now I have resolvers that are doing things really badly. Pretty badly. I think they did it on purpose, so it doesn't look intentional. Because if you add the flag AD or DO, you are removed from the response. But if you add the city flag in the query, it is also response from the remove. So they just do it so that you don't validate, so that for them to say, look, I didn't do it on purpose, but only a few people use it. But this is not funny. So when you use the router pointing at servers that are being manipulated, the moment you go through those servers that transparently could intercept traffic, your flags may be removed. So remember, DNS day, but you will have it here. Not the server, but the clients are manipulating this area. Now I'll show you a demo. What is the key here? Well, this started to give us ideas, and they said, oh, let us be very careful if this is happening. Perhaps there is something that we can do to simulate this type of behavior. Because we are in this environment, so I'd like you to pay attention to this. If I make a dig, I'm not going to input -TA. So this is one of our domains, DNSSEC.info, the ones that we signed. So I get the DA register of record. And then I go and say, do it with DNSSEC. I would like you to validate it for me. I inputted DA and OD, but what do I get? No flag DO, no flag AD, no signature. And if I try to bypass that and to go to another resolver, which is not that one, which is manipulating my flags, then I respond. I get the DO, the signature. I get everything. And that's where the problem lies. So you might remember that we left this secure DNS button and say, please intercept everything for me. And this that I've just showed you is without that button. That is to say, the least worst behavior, which is bad enough. And what happens when I enable that? The routers redirect with IP tables to UDP port 53 and redirects everything to itself. And then from there, it sends it to the other side. And what is the conclusion here? When you enable this button, if I make the query but to 999, I cannot use DNSSEC either, because it is already taking in all the traffic to 53 and then sending the DNSSEC and manipulating them. How can I jump it? How can I bypass it? Okay, so find it, okay? The sooner you find it, the sooner we go for via. I may use DNS over TLS or HTTPS to bypass all this infrastructure to create a tunnel and to come out the other way. It's like if I basically do a VPN to come out of that, but simpler than that. If I didn't have those capabilities, could I do it? Could I still do it? Yes, of course, can be changing the IP tables. Of course, or disabling the button. Yes, of course, I know that. But from the client side, without hatching, without doing anything to the router, give them a clue, because it is too late. Okay, I'll give you a clue. Notice the rule. Pay attention to the rule and where DNS is working. UDP and TCP. If I launch a query, such as this one, and say, please use TCP, I have already bypassed it. I should not have told you, because the TCP rule will be included very soon. Well, but you do it with TCP. That's the other option you have. Conclusion. In the network ones, even if I don't have the secure DNS, I cannot do it, because the network manipulates TCP and UDP. I can only change, I either change the resolver, or basically I add the TCP and I don't get the DNSSEC response, because in the network they can manipulate everything. The only solution is to bypass those proxies. You do it through DOH or others. And as my friend Joshua Wright says, I don't know whether you are aware of the Wright's principle, which is very important. He says the following: security won't get better until tools for practical exploration of the attack surface are made available. So because of the 10th anniversary of Rooted, we'd like to introduce you to DNSSEC Chef. What is this? This is a proxy to intercept DNS and DNSSEC based on DNS Chef that already existed from Peter Kaseljiski, and based on a library. We've been working with these weeks to use it in our tool that has been developed by Paul Chakravarty. So what is the idea behind this tool? Basically, manipulating anywhere. So you just go to any point where that communication is taking place and you can manipulate traffic. I'd like to show you a couple of examples, and with that we will finish. This will be the one that is being resolved. Okay, I will do this bit here. Give me a sec. And this will be the proxy. For the sake of simplicity, while we are using the virtual machines, VPN, we could have trouble there. Basically, I will launch it here locally. DNSSEC Chef. I go over there now so that you can see the configuration. Notice this. If we come over here, give me a sec. If, well, we've seen this before. You are clear about that. DNSSEC.info. So no DNSSEC. If we add DNSSEC because we are being manipulated, is no use. But for you to give you context, as we did before. So if I go through another resolver, we receive DNSSEC. What happens now if we launch our tool? So basically, the tool, we want it to work as a proxy for DNS and DNSSEC with two main options. One, this is you, and say, no, don't worry, everything is validated through NS. And then DNSSEC, and the other one decides you, but just saying the opposite. I disable DNSSEC for everything. That's the idea about it. We will be launching the first one. I will be using a file in both of them. We can run file options specifying what you want to manipulate in the DNS. I want that W triple DNSSEC info would be 10.12.56, whatever you would like to respond. So we start off with DNSSEC option, and then what we will do now, what I ask is for the password because it goes on to the port 53. You see it is running, there is a file saying please replace DNSSEC info with this or that, like 10, 11, 12, 66. So the fun part here is that if I launch the same query, but going through that proxy, and you may go say, yes, but if you are pointing at the proxy, you are self-attacking yourself. But the key here is that I create a rule of IPT table to redirect transparently the traffic, and I'm not noticing anything, and then you will see the rule in GitHub if you want to test it yourself. What happens now? Now the fake IP, that of the attacker, comes back to me, is returned to me with AD and DO. And then I say, oh, it's been already validated on top, so it is a good IP. No, it is not a good IP at all. But we are playing with the AD and DO flags to our liking. And what can we do in this environment? We can just do the opposite, what we've seen in the operator. So we stop there, we launch it, and we say with no DNSSEC, and then basically in the flag manipulation, we just do the opposite. By the time I will come here and I will launch the query or the request, so it happens, but it happened with the operator. Neither AD or DO, no, nothing. It is removing everything, but it's giving me, is returning the false IP. So we have full flexibility to play around with everything of DNSSEC, validation, and we can do all that with these tools. Can you see the proxy well? And well, then we leave it there, and then we move on to the last part. This is the tool, these are the options available. How many of you would like us to release the tool now? I cannot hear you. Okay, say it louder. Okay, good, I got it. Oh, hold on. Well, the problem here is the screen. So, it is in GitHub. You see the description, how to do that. We see transparent proxy in IP tables, initial configuration. That's why we are in the open source hackathon. So, if basically what we will do is like to make it public. If it allows me to do it, and apparently I only need to enter the name. Now I'm making it public. Oh, come on.
Espérate que ahora cuando empecemos con los factores de autentificación, despedidos de las cervezas.
Well, by the time we will get to two-factor authentication, forget about beer. Oh, I cannot remember. Okay, hold on. This is the demo effect, okay. Good now. So, GitHub DNSSEC chef. So we will refresh. Okay. It is there for you. Okay, no complaints. Okay, and with that, conclusions. You've seen we have tried to open the chamber of secret DNSSECrets. So now it is time for you to heal them, to cut off their heads, and that's basically the idea. Beers are just round the corner. Conclusions. Nobody said that it was going to be easy. DNSSEC is like Harry Potter and real life. There are many people on the bad side, on the wrong side, only a few people on the right side. But same as it happened in Harry Potter, some who look to be the bad guys at the end of the day prove to be the good guys. We have the wise people on our side. So we have Dumbledore, we compare it to ICANN. So people are protesting because of the spoiler. Well, if you haven't seen Harry Potter now, well, this is not a spoiler anymore. So surely, altogether, we will be successful in the implementation of DNSSEC. Okay, this is a tweet that we wrote, asking people what type of DNS would you trust to secure your communication. So these small ones or one of your own which is private, and people said that they would trust the public ones more, and Google is in one of them. Okay, so this is food for thought. So we'd like to thank you. Would allow myself to hijack the session. I would like to thank our parents and their generation. Then, with only few resources and lots of limitations, succeeded in giving us efficient and good enough resources so that we could overcome those limitations. And now that we are at the other end, we also have to thank our kids that live in a time surrounded by endless resources. So we are accountable for helping them to self-impose limits. And I give the floor to you. Well, we are seeing that as parents, and this is the real life. Those of us who went, well, many years ago, we used to draw that area, that figure, then the rectangle, then we were only asked about the base, the height of the rectangle, then students were asked to choose one of those questions, then what is the area, only one option is offered, and then basically what we are seeing nowadays, and this is real life. So, well, if you can, please color the rectangle and behave well. So, implementing what it says on top is like implementing DNSSEC, and then what it says at the bottom is the hype we started talking about. Okay, and now you are free. Yes, sir. I'm free now. And as I say, you are free to do whatever you'd like to do with DNSSEC and with other technologies. And also would like to take this opportunity to say a practical joke. And before we start to make comparison between couples, different type of couples in history, well, I'd like to, I don't know, for instance, we could also be compared to these people. And I would like to hand out the sock to Raul, and I would like to free him. All right. Oh, I was not expecting that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that that would happen, okay? Or I didn't know about those slides. So you know that we always like to finish off with Spanish proverbs because, well, we have chosen a proverb each. So if you use DNSSEC, you will be successful. And then if you don't use the DNSSEC, you can be easily impersonated. So beer time now and happy anniversary. Happy birthday.
Bueno, una pregunta, y salís todos corriendo por las escaleras para salir a la cerveza, ¿vale? Que me va a pegar fuego el patrocinador.
Beer time.
Hola, lo siento, Tarascos.
Venga, lánzala.
El criptógrafo Daniel Bernstein,
cryptographer, strongly criticized DNS because he said it allowed attacks and amplification. Has that been resolved? Does it continue to be true? Do you disagree with it? Yes, amplification and attacks are one of the main problems of DNSSEC. Exactly. That issue has not been resolved yet. Where do amplification attacks come from? But we also have them in other protocols. We should not put the blame on DNSSEC, NMP, and many others. If I launch a query, instead of returning the IP, I should be getting the IP, the signature, and other records. So therefore, the traffic increases. This is an example that contradicts the respected by myself, Daniel Bernstein. People like Cloudflare are working on very many tricks using elliptic curves so that the signatures are minimum. And that, considering the big bandwidth that we have nowadays, please, David, apologize me. Nowadays, you should know that someone is making a denial of service, and please do not put the blame on DNSSEC because DNSSEC is not to blame. But if you get 2,000 queries, filter those requests of queries, and you cannot really say that DNSSEC multiplies responses. So with this, I mean that DNSSEC is not to blame for that. So thank you very much, everyone. We will be around if you have other questions.